it's been an interesting summer.
Yeah, it has been an interesting summer. Not unusual. If you look back over time and look at the demand, irrigation demand in seasons, we've had these before. It's just that we haven't had one this severe probably since 1997-98. And in fact, the whole season mimics, to a large extent, 97-98. If you watch the way the El Nino or the Southern Oscillation Index has developed over this season, so starting back in July and August last year, and look at the rainfall patterns on a month-by-month basis, very, very similar to 97-98. The scary thing about that is that it didn't really break in 97-98 until May. So if the seasons do mimic each other perfectly, or follow the same pattern as they are at the moment, then it could be May before we get some serious relief from the drought. And despite what other people say, we have a drought.
So how bad is it?
Oh well, it's on a scale. If you look at the last sort of like 50 years of record where we can model demand, irrigation demand, it's up there with the It's not the highest. I mean, we have to go back to 88, 89, and farmers probably with the colour here I've got will really remember 97 and 88, 89. That was really severe because it started way back in September. We had really warm temperatures, high northwest winds, all the way through to February, and didn't really get any relief until we got into about June that year. So it's not on the scale that we had in 88, 89, but it's certainly up there in the top 5 or 6 events that we've had in the last 50 years. There's water restrictions everywhere, including the big rivers. I mean, if you go to the Rakai earlier this week, Band 3 water, which is generally relatively reliable, they were down to 8% of their allocation on Monday. Fortunately, it's been a little bit northwesterly in the last few days. We've got the river back up, and most people are on full takes yesterday and today. So that's a relief, but we've been on really restrictive flows. I mean, almost all of the lowland rivers, the foothill rivers, no water out of them at all. Even the Balmoral scheme and the Amuri scheme in Culverden, which is usually relatively reliable, has been on restrictions. And of course, everybody hears the plight at the Opua Dam where they switched irrigators off nearly 2 weeks ago and are probably very close to actually running out of water to supplement flow in the river. So, it's severe. Groundwater's fine. What is starting to bite with groundwater is that farmers, irrigators who have not operated very efficiently or might have low annual volumes or have increased the area of land they're trying to irrigate with the same annual volume, have run out of annual volume. Now, Environment Canada's been very proactive about this, and we're able to get, if you can find someone that will lease you some water for the rest of the season, we're doing partial transfers for farmers for the rest of the season, generally through to about April the 30th, and they're being processed in a very, very, very rapid manner at the moment. So there's a lot of those going on at the moment, if you can find somebody that's got some water in your region.
There'll be a loss of production?
There's going to be losses in production. I mean, dryland guys, I don't know what their yields are going to be like, but there's not going to be very much harvested. Some of the dryland crops that I do know that have been harvested averaged about, some of the wheat on pretty good soils is about 1.5 to 2 tonnes to the hectare. To the acre, sorry, so that's only about 3 or 4 tonnes to the hectare. That's really low. But for the most part, on irrigated properties, our yields have been very good. The wheat yields have been very good. Ryegrass yields have been good. We've had, for those sorts of crops, we actually had in Canterbury, we actually had relatively good growing conditions for those crops. They grew in cool, temperate climate, temperatures and weather in that September, October, November, early December period, and sure they got pushed along pretty hard from the second or third week of December through to harvest, but they've also been harvested in relatively good conditions. We haven't had too many problems with harvest. I mean, might be nor'westerly rain today, but for the most part we've been able to, guys have been able to go out and harvest when they've needed to harvest. So But for anybody dry land, anybody that had that didn't use their water judiciously, especially pastoral operations, there'll be some yield losses.
So where to from here as far as irrigation and as an industry is concerned?
Oh, look, I think this is a real wake-up call for people. Anybody taking water from groundwater, and this doesn't just apply to Canterbury, this applies to anybody that's taking groundwater in New Zealand, everybody's going to have an annual volume, or they already have an annual volume. You must start out at the beginning of the irrigation season believing that this could be the 9 out of 10 season or the 90 percentile season, which is what your water is allocated on the basis of, particularly in Canterbury. You need to be in the shoulders of the seasons. That's the early spring to mid-spring. You need to think more seriously about how much water you're putting on. So if you just start and irrigate in the hope that everything's going to grow because you've applied some water, you need to look at other factors. The number of people that we know that have run out of annual volume and do no soil moisture monitoring or anything. It's just, I'm going to start irrigating and I'm going to irrigate and I'm going to carry on. They're not making any objective decisions. And it's probably a wake-up call for those people as well to make sure that they do some other monitoring, soil moisture, soil temperatures. Make sure your water meters have been verified, for example, so that you know that you are pumping exactly what you should be pumping. Had a very good example in the last couple of days where somebody was taking stock water and shed water, but the pump was registering 20 litres a second. Well, it can't get up and out of a 2-inch or 50 millimetre pipe at 20 litres a second. So logic would tell you there's something wrong with the water meter. But that has put them over their allocation for that particular take. And they gave it no thought at all. So the season has probably been a very good wake-up call. We all know that water is a scarce commodity, whether it's coming from rivers, storage or groundwater, and we have to use it wisely and judiciously, and this is probably a very good wake-up call that these objective measurements are really important to the management of the resource.